You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Revolutionary Radio Project with your host, Rob Skiba.
All I'm offering is the truth.
Hello and welcome to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and I'm excited to be joined once again by my friend and co-host for our series on the book of Genesis, Zen Garcia. Are you there, sir?
I am, brother, and happy almost New Year. It's certainly been a crazy one. I hope for better times and return to normalcy for next year.
Boy, man, I have a feeling things are going to get crazy in the next week or so. I hope, I don't know what to believe anymore, dude.
Right.
I mean, just when you think there's a spark of hope, something else crazy happens, and you're like, oh, for crying out loud, what's next,
Mm-hmm, right.
Of course, if we are headed into the last days, well, I mean, we've been talking about it for decades, so we should
right.
we should know what to expect. But it's one thing to talk about it; it's another to actually enter into it. So I guess we'll find out one way or another.
Yeah, certainly. Hope for the best and
prepare for the worst.
Prepare for the worst, absolutely.
That's pretty much what it comes down to these days. Okay, let's see here. We read Genesis 23 last week, and the corresponding portions from Joshua, Jubilees, and you finished actually last week the writings of Abraham.
Yes.
So we're done with that book. So I guess it will just be stuff in the Targums, Legends of the Jews, Legends of the Prophets, and Patriarchs, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go ahead and jump in then, if you're ready.
Yep, ready.
Okay, Genesis 24. And Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all that he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. But thou shalt go unto my country and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. And the servant said unto him, Peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land. Must I needs bring thy son again unto the land from whence thou camest? And Abraham said unto him, Beware thou that thou bring not my son thither again. The Lord God of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land, he shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son from thence. And if the woman will not be willing to follow thee, then thou shalt be clear from this my oath, only bring not my son thither again. And the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and sware to him concerning this matter. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master, and departed. For all the goods of his master were in his hands. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, unto the city of Nahor. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, even the time that women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, I pray thee, send me good speed this day, and show kindness unto my master Abraham. Behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. Let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, Let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink, and she shall say, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. Let the same be she that thou hast appointed for my servant Isaac. and thereby shall I know that thou hast showed kindness unto my master. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that, behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well, and filled her pitcher, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her, and said, Let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. And she said, Drink, my lord. And she hasted, and let down her pitcher upon her hand, and gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also, until they have done drinking. And she hasted and emptied her pitcher into the trough, and ran again unto the well to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And the man wondering at her held his peace, to wit whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of half a shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold, and said, Whose daughter art thou? Tell me, I pray thee. Is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge in? And she said unto him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bare unto Nahor. And she said moreover unto him, We have both straw and provender enough, and room to lodge in. And the man bowed down his head, and worshipped the Lord. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who hath not left destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I being in the way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren. And the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. And Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. And Laban ran out unto the man unto the well. And it came to pass, when he saw the earring and bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, Thus spake the man unto me, that he came unto the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the well. And he said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. Wherefore standest thou without? For I have prepared the house, a room for the camels, and room for the camels. And the man came into the house, and ungirded his camels, and gave straw and provender for the camels, and water to wash his feet, and the men's feet that were with him. And there was set meat before him to eat. But he said, I will not eat until I have told mine errand. And he said, Speak on. And he said, I am Abraham's servant, and the Lord hath blessed my master greatly, and he has become very great. And he hath given him flocks and herds, and silver and gold, and men servants and maid servants, and camels and asses. And Sarah my master's wife bare a son to my master when she was old, and unto him hath he given all that he hath. And my master made me swear, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife to my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. But thou shalt go unto my father's house, and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son. And I said unto my master, Peradventure the woman will not follow me. And he said unto me, The Lord, before whom I walk, will send his angel with thee, and prosper thy way, and thou shalt take a wife for my son of my kindred, and of my father's house. Then shalt thou be clear from this my oath, when thou comest to my kindred, and if they give not thee one, thou shalt be clear from my oath. And I came this day unto the well, and said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, if now thou do prosper my way which I go, behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin cometh forth to draw water, and I say unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water of thy pitcher to drink, and she say to me, Both drink thou, and I will also draw for thy camels, let the same be the woman whom the Lord hath appointed out for my master's son. And before I had done speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came forth with her pitcher on her shoulder, and she went down unto the well, and drew water. And I said unto her, Let me drink, I pray thee. And she made haste, and let down her pitcher from her shoulder, and said, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. So I drank, and she made the camels drink also. And I asked her, and said, Whose daughter art thou? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bare unto him. And I put the earring upon her face, and the bracelets upon her hands. And I bowed down my head, and worshipped the Lord, and blessed the Lord God of my master Abraham, which had led me in the right way to take my master's brother's daughter unto his son. And now, if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. And then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing proceedeth from the Lord. We cannot speak unto thee bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Lord hath spoken. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. And he gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. And they did eat, drink, and he and the men that were with him, and tarried all night. And they rose up in the morning, and he said, Send me away unto my master. And her brother and her mother said, Let the damsel abide with us a few days, at the least 10. After that she shall go. And he said unto them, Hinder me not, seeing the Lord hath prospered my way. Send me away, that I may go to my master. And they said, We will call the damsel, and inquire at her mouth. And they called Rebekah, and said unto her, Wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebekah their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant, and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, and said unto her, Thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gates of those which hate them. And Rebekah arose, and her damsels, and they rode upon the camels, and followed the man, and the servant took Rebekah, and went his way. And Isaac came from the way of the well Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the south country. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the eventide, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she had said unto the servant, What man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant hath said, It is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Wow, quite a cool story.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I will pick up with the Targum.
Okay, looks like we got about 4 minutes before the break.
Okay, do you want me to start, or should we cover anything else?
Yeah, I guess you can go ahead and start, because any commentary that I would have would take longer than 4 minutes, I think. So.
Okay, sure. All right, just tell me when.
Okay.
Chapter 24, the Targum. And Abraham was old with days, and the word of the Lord had blessed Abraham with every kind of blessing. And Abraham said to Eleazar his servant, the senior of his house, who had rule over all his property, Put now thy hand upon the section of my circumcision, Jerusalem. And Abraham said to his servant, the ruler who had rule over all that was his, Put now thy hand under the thigh of my covenant, and swear to me in the name of the word of the Lord God, whose habitation is in heaven on high, the God whose dominion is over the earth, that thou wilt not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but that thou wilt go to the land and the house of my kindred, and take a wife for my son, for Isaac. And the domestic said to him, The woman may not be willing to come after me to this land. Shall I, returning, make thy son return to the land from whence thou camest? And Abraham said to him, Beware lest thou make my son return thither. The Lord God, whose seat is in heaven on high, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spake to me and sware to me, saying, To thy son will I give this land. He will seasonably send his angel, and thou shalt take a wife for my son from thence. But if the woman be not willing to come after thee, thou shalt be innocent from this my oath. To come, only make not my son return thither. And the servant put his hand upon the circumcised part of Abraham his lord, and sware to him according to this thing. And the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his lord, and went, for all the goodly treasures of his lord were in his hand. And he arose and went unto Aram, which was by the Ferat, to the city of Nahor, Jerusalem. And all the goodly treasures of his lord were in his hand. And he arose and went to Aram, which is by Ferat, Naharaim. And he made the camels lie down without the city by the fountain of the waters at the time of evening, the time when the fillers of water come forth. And he said, Lord God of my master Abraham, prepare thou a proper woman before me today, and deal graciously with my master Abraham. Behold, I stand at the will. Right?
Yeah, we're going to break, so we'll pick up when we come back.
All right.
And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and Zen, right before the break, you were reading from the Targums, so why don't you go ahead and pick up where you left off there.
All right. And he said, Lord God of my master Abraham, prepare thou a proper woman before me today, and deal graciously with my master Abraham. Behold, I stand at the well of waters, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming forth to fill waters. Let the damsel to whom I say, reach me now thy pitcher that I may drink, and she say, drink, and I will also make my camels drink, be she whom thou hast provided, to go to thy servant Itzhak, and herein shall I know that thou hast dealt graciously with my master. And it was in that little hour, while he had not ceased to speak, that behold, Rebekah came forth, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, the brother of Abraham, and her pitcher was upon her shoulder. And the damsel was a virgin, very beautiful to behold. And she descended to the fountain and filled her pitcher, and came up, and the servant ran to meet her, and said, let me taste now a little water from thy pitcher. And she said, drink, my lord, and hastened to let her down her pitcher upon her hand, and gave him drink. And she finished giving him drink, and said, also, for thy camels, I will fill until they be satisfied with drinking. And she hastened and emptied the pitcher into the canal, the place of drinking, and ran again to the well to fill. And she filled for all his camels, Jerusalem. And she made haste and poured out her vase into the midst of the trough, and filled and gave drink to all the camels. But the man waited and was silent to know whether the Lord had prospered his way or not. And he was, when the camels had been satisfied with drink, that the man took an earring of gold of a drachma in weight, the counterpart of the drachma of the head, money, which her children presented for the work of the sanctuary. And he set 2 golden bracelets upon her hands, in weight 10 silene of gold, the sum of their weight being the counterpart of the 2 tables on which were inscribed the 10 words. And he said, whose daughter art thou? Tell me now, if in thy father's house there be room for us to lodge. And she said, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bare to Nahor. And she told him, saying, there is also straw and provender in plenty with us, as also proper room to lodge. And the man bowed and worshipped before the Lord, who had thus prepared before him a suitable wife. And he said, blessed be the name of the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who hath not restrained his mercy and his truth from my master. For the sake of his righteousness, in the right way hath the Lord led me to the house of my master's brother. And Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. And Laban ran towards the man without at the fountain. And when Laban saw the ring and the bracelets upon the hands of his sister, and heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, Thus hath the man spoken with me, he came to the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the fountain. And Laban thought that this was Abraham, and said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. Wherefore standest thou without, when I have purified the house from strange worship, and have prepared a place for the camels? And the man entered the house, and Laban undid the gear of the camels, and gave the camels straw and provender, and water to Eleazar to wash his feet, and the feet of the men who were with him. And he set in order before him to eat prepared food, in which was poison to kill. But he objected to it, and said, I will not eat until I have spoken my words. And he said, Speak. And he said, I am the servant of Abraham, and the Lord hath blessed my master greatly, and hath increased and given him sheep, and oxen, silver and gold, servants and handmaids, and camels and asses. And Sarah, my master's wife, bare a son after she was old, and he hath given to him all that he hath. And my master made me swear, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, but shalt go to my kindred and take a wife for my son. But I said to my master, Perhaps the woman will not come after me. And he said to me, The Lord before whom I worship will appoint his angel to be with thee, and will prosper thy way. And thou shalt take a wife for my son, from my household, from the race of my father's house. Then shalt thou be free from my oath. If when thou art come to the house of my kindred, they give not to thee, thou shalt be free from thy oath. And I came today to the fountain, and said, Lord God of my master Abraham, if now thou hast prospered the journey upon which I have come, behold, I stand at the fountain of water. Let the damsel who may come forth to fill, to whom I will say, Give me now a little water to drink from thy pitcher. And she say, Drink, and for thy camels also will I draw. Be the wife whom the Lord hath prepared by his decree for my master's son. I had not yet finished speaking in the thoughts of my heart, when behold, Rebekah came forth with the pitcher upon her shoulder, and went down to the fountain and filled. And I said, Let me now drink. And she hastened and let down her pitcher from her, and said, Drink, and I will also give thy camels drink. And I asked her and said, Whose daughter art thou? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, the son of Nahor, whom Milcah bare to him. And I set the jewel upon her brow, and the bracelets on her hand, and bowed and worshipped before the Lord. And I blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me in the true way, to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the south or to the north. And Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing hath come forth from before the Lord, that Rebekah should be given to Isaac, and we cannot say to thee either evil or good. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take and go, and let her be the wife of thy master's son, as the Lord hath spoken. And when Abraham's servant heard these words, he worshipped on the ground before the Lord. And the servant brought forth vessels of silver and of gold, and vestments, and gave them to Rebekah. And presents give he to her brother and to her mother. And they ate and drank, he and the men who were with him, and passed the night. And he arose in the morning and said, Send me away to my master. But as they prepared food, and in the morning they found that he was dead. Bethuel had eaten of that prepared food, and in the morning they found that he was dead. And the brother and the mother said, Therefore, let the damsel dwell with us the days of 1 year, or 10 months, and then she shall go. And he said, Hinder me not. When the Lord hath prospered my way, let me depart, and I will go to my master. And they said, we will call Rebekah and hear what she says. And they called Rebekah and said to her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they let Rebekah their sister go, and her nurse, and the servant of Abraham and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, and said to her, hitherto thou wast our sister, and now thou art going, and art wedded to the righteous. So prosper thou, that they from thee may come thousands of myriads, and may thy sons inherit the cities of those who hate them. And Rebekah arose and her damsel, and they rode upon camels, and went after the man. And the servant took Rebekah with him and journeyed. And as the way was shortened to him in his journey to Paddan Aram, so was it shortened to him in his return, that in one day he went, and in one day he returned. And Itzhak was coming from the school of the Rabbi Shem by the way of the fountain, where he had been revealed to him, the living and the eternal one, who seeth and is not seen, and he resideth in the land of the south, the Jerusalem. And Itzhak was coming from the school of the Rabbi Shem at the fountain where he had been revealed to him, the Shekinah of the Lord, and he dwelt in the land of the south. And Itzhak went forth to pray upon the face of the field at the time of evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were approaching. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes and saw Itzhak, and she bowed upon the camel. And she said to the servant, who is the man so majestic and graceful, who walks in the field before us? And the servant said, he is my master. And she took a veil and covered herself. Jerusalem. And she took a veil and wrapped herself in it. And the servant related to Itzhak everything he had done, and Itzhak introduced her into the tabernacle of Sarah, his mother. And thereupon the light again shined, which had gone out at the time of Sarah's death. And he took Rebekah, and she was his wife, and he loved her, for he saw her works, that they were upright as the works of his mother. And Itzhak was consoled after his mother's death.
I was distracted at the part about Bethuel. What was the deal?
Yeah,
he died?
They tried to poison them.
Yeah, can you go back to that? I was looking at the chat room, and I was like, what? And I went back, and you'd already scrolled past it a little bit, but I missed that part. I only got the tail end of it.
Yeah, in another one of the stories, I forget where it was, but it also mentions that as well, that Laban and Bethuel were trying to kill who they thought was Abraham so they could steal his inheritance.
What?
Yeah,
so
Laban was evil. He was a worshiper of idols too. Well, you know that.
So the thing hath come forth. So, okay, right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, go back and read that.
Bethuel had eaten of that prepared food.
So they were preparing food for, and they ate and drank, and he and the men who were with him, and passed the night. And he rose in the morning and said, send me away to my master. But as they were talking in the evening, Bethuel had eaten of the prepared food, and in the morning they found that he was dead. What? And the brother and mother said before, let the damsel dwell with us the days of 1 year and 10 months. So was Bethuel, who was Bethuel? Was that her father?
Yes, the father.
So they were intending to, I don't get it, because Abraham's not there. So
right, they thought Eleazar was Abraham.
Oh. And they wanted to kill him.
Yes, is what it said up here. That's
another interesting nugget that we were missing in Genesis.
Right.
And this is from the Targum, so. Wow.
Here it is. Yeah, here's the part. And Laban undid the gear of the camels, gave the camels straw and provender and water to Eleazar to wash his feet, and the feet of the men who were with him. And he set in order before him to eat prepared food, in which was poison to kill.
What?
But he objected to it and said, I will not eat until I have spoken my words. And he said, speak. And then it was before that that it said.
Wow, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Thus had the man spoken with me. He came to the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the fountain. And Laban thought that this was Abraham, and said, come in, thou blessed of the Lord. So he was intending to kill Abraham, for sure.
When I have purified the house from strange worship and have prepared a place for the camels. Wow. So Laban was a scumbag all along. I mean, we see what he does to Jacob later, but man.
Right, yeah. It shows his true character.
Wow. And so, I mean, it doesn't seem like the wife or Rebecca were keen to what was going on, though.
No.
They just say, oh, he's dead. So that explains why they want Rebecca to hang around for a number of days, because they figured, oh, her dad just died. Maybe we should have a funeral or something.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's in the Legends of the Jews that it actually talks about that.
Wow.
Which I'll read from it whenever, if you want to read from Jasher or bring anything else up.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see where we left off in Joshua 25. No, because that goes on to Keturah. Oh, well, yeah, Keturah. Isaac took Rebekah and became... So I read about Isaac becoming his wife in chapter 24 of Joshua, so I already covered as much as Joshua does with this passage. 12 sons, 6 sons command. I'm looking at Jubilees 20 right now. It looks like that's ahead of where we are, too. So
I can catch up these other two.
Okay. Well, the only commentary that I would give is I really appreciate Eleazar, is throwing out the fleece, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, okay, he loves his master. He really wants to make sure that he gets the right one. But, I mean, this is a pretty huge task, right? I mean, you're going to a strange land, and you got to try to find, first of all, because Abraham was pretty specific, find a daughter from my household.
Right.
So not only has he got to go to a strange land, but he's also got to find the actual location of Abraham's ancestors or kindred.
Yes.
And so he's like, okay, Father, you're gonna have to help me here, And I really appreciate the very specific prayer, and I pray that way myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sometimes I've learned to let it be more generic, because I like to be surprised by what he does,
Uh-huh.
But there are times when I'll, then if it's meant to be, then let this happen,
Right.
And there have been many, many stories that have been huge turning points in my life where this happened. I'll just share at least one of them, maybe two. But when I was going through my divorce, before I'd left Massachusetts, it was a rough time up there. And we were separated, and I was back living with my parents, and was losing everything and filing for bankruptcy and just all kinds of stuff. It was just miserable. And I ended up getting a working gig where I finally started getting some money. And it was like in that season, I kept meeting homeless people like everywhere. It seemed like homeless people were everywhere I looked. And this one time, I was running an errand for my boss, and I was in his van. And I had just gotten a paycheck, and it was like the first time I'd had a pretty decent paycheck in a long time. And I really, really needed it. And as I'm driving to the post office, I see this homeless guy, and I felt like Father was saying, you need to give your what you just made to him. And I'm like, okay, Father, have you been paying attention to the last several months here? Really? But I couldn't shake the feeling like I was supposed to do that, So I was very specific in my prayer in that instance. I said, Father, okay, I feel what you're doing here. So I don't want to just, I need this. So if he needs it more than I do, then I'm going to go into the post office and do my business there, mail my packages or whatever. When I come out, let him still be there. If he's just a guy who's just going to drink it away or do drugs or, waste this, hard-earned money that I desperately needed myself, if he's just going to, if it's just going to be a waste, then, please cause a distraction, have him walk off, do something, so he's not there. So I took my sweet time in the post office doing my business, and I came out and he was still there. So I was like, okay. So it was a hot day. I said, hey man, come over here. And he was trusting enough to get in a van with me. I said, come in, come on in. It's hot out there. So he sat in the passenger seat, and I said, I want to help you out, brother, but I want to know what your story is, man. What's the deal? Why are you in this position? And as he began to tell me his story, it was my story. I was like,
oh, right on.
And I started crying. I'm like, dude, you're where I'm about to be. I'm going through the same thing you're going. Mm-hmm. Everything you're telling me right now is what I'm going through right now. And he stops and he goes, you need to read the book of Hosea. And I'm like, what? As a New Testament Bible believing Christian, that's like Habakkuk, right? I mean, who reads those books, right? I'm like, what? So this guy launches into this preaching message. I mean, he starts preaching to me for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this guy's ministering more to me than I was ever intending to do for him, And anyways, like, I want to pray for you, man. I'm going to pray for you. I'm like, I should be praying for you. He's like, you can do that too if you want. I'm like, okay. So he prayed over me. I prayed over him. I gave him what I had and wished him well. And he got out of the van, and I was just in tears. And I just, in the time it took me to say, Father, wow, thank you, for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you're going to take care of me, and you for whatever reason, you decided to use me to help take care of him. Thank you for this divine appointment. And in the time it took me to say that, I looked back in the mirror and I looked around, and he was gone. Like I couldn't find him anywhere. I'm like, okay, Father, was that like an angel unaware situation? Was that a test? I don't know. And I found out later, and this is a principle that I've learned is a fact of life. You reap what you sow. And all the homeless people that he was putting in my path at that time, he was testing me. Are you going to help these people? And it wasn't something that was out of my abundance to help them. It was like, I'm struggling myself here. But, I was faithful to the conviction that I was feeling, so I did. And, well, when I became homeless, guess what happened? I got back what was given to me. What I was giving away was given to me, I mean, people I didn't know, strangers helping me with all kinds of stuff, in my season. So it makes me think, I'm like, okay, Father, I guess, those were tests, because I wonder, if I didn't help those in need at those times, would I have done as well as I did when I was homeless? I tend to think no.
No, absolutely.
And it wasn't, I don't know, it was a year or two later or so, I exchanged information with that guy, and he ended up calling me. It was quite some time after that event, but he called me to let me know that the seed that I had planted in him and helped him that day enabled him to get his feet back on the ground. And now, he was doing well again, and he was he had started like a homeless ministry for people, and
that's great.
So it turned out he wasn't an angel, but that's just one. I could give many examples all night long, but just to share that, I believe it's good to pray intentional prayers, to ask for specific things. In that case, I was like, if this guy really needs it, Father, let him still be there. Sure enough, he was still there. He could have walked away or whatever. I've had many, and other ones were more generic. I'm like, Father, just give me 3 billboard-sized signs that I can't mistake. I'll just, I don't want to miss it. Just make it so big that my only conclusion can be, wow, only God could do that. And and I get the feeling that was the vibe that was going on here with Eliezer.
Absolutely.
I mean, what are the odds, right? I mean, this guy, well, let me think about that. Where did Abraham acquire Eliezer? He got Eliezer from his father, right, Terah?
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, so Eliezer then would have been at least somewhat familiar with the area. So he he knew probably the general area to go. Although this has been probably decades, maybe since the last time he was there. So taking a shot in the dark, I'd imagine he's taking the path, retracing their steps probably, because Abraham comes from Ur the Chaldees. They stop in Haran, and then they come down to Shechem, and then he has various sojourns throughout the land of Canaan. So I imagine he would have at least backtracked as far as Haran. Where does he meet them? Does he meet them? Well, it's Mesopotamia. Haran is Haran part of Mesopotamia, or did he go further south? Because Haran's like north from Canaan.
I think he went
further south, southeast, south of Haran.
Yeah.
So he went down the Mediterranean, not the Mediterranean, the Euphrates River, valley probably. At any rate, he
further into the Promised Land.
Yeah, so he backtracked his way back to the land of Abraham's forefathers, and his prayer is so specific. Okay, there's a well there when I get there, and I know that the women come out at this certain time of the night, so and it looks like it's the first one. The first one that comes out is Rebecca, but he's like, because the woman can say, I don't know who you are, or say, no, get your own water,
right.
Or okay, yeah, she could have given him a drink, but he specifically that she offers me a drink and volunteers to feed my camels also, water my camels. And so at that point he's got to be like, and apparently she was hot, so I guess
right. Yeah.
Abraham's family produces good women.
Yeah, right.
Because Sarah, the way the texts are describing Sarah, and several of the texts, like, wow. I mean, of course, even well into her old age, you got kings and stuff that are excited about her. So, that's just it's a heartwarming story. Now, Joshua, though, tells you that she was quite young. She was, I believe, 10.
Right.
Which we discussed in the last show, so I don't really need to go into it here. But there's no indication that we're dealing with a, Epstein scenario.
Yeah, right,
here.
right.
It's all above board. But and it's cool. I mean, this is like a Disney movie or something. When she's riding the camel's back or whatever to get back to town, and the Targum says that he's coming out of the house of Shem.
Yes.
Shem's school. So Shem is still around. Man, I'm really conflicted on this, man, because I listened to Doug Woodward and I understand the stuff that we see in the other texts about the 5,500 year timeline. I think we talked about this last show also, that it must be that the added 1,500-ish years must be pre-flood, although there's reason to believe, because like Doug Woodward thinks that Nimrod and all that is long predates Abraham, and Shem would have been long dead before. But yet we have the Targum, we have Joshua. I mean, it seems like it's almost evenly split between the books that would endorse this timeline and the books that would conflict with it. So, hang on, we're going to our next break here, so we'll pick up when we come back.
All right, sounds good.
We're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I'm your host, Rob Skiba, and we're going into the second hour of the broadcast. And right before the break, Zen and I, we were talking about the timelines. And, it seems to me that it's kind of evenly split between the manuscripts that support this timeline, with Shem still being around and Nimrod contemporary. It seems like there's as many ancient texts that support that narrative as there are the narrative that would suggest that no, Nimrod was long before Abraham and Shem would have been dead by then, and Shem couldn't have been the Melchizedek that Abraham encountered in Genesis 14. So what's your take on it? I mean, you're probably more familiar with these texts even than I am. So what are your thoughts on that?
I do agree that there is time missing, and that according to the first book of Adam and Eve, there is the prophecy of Christ coming 5,500 years after. How that timeline breaks down, I have no idea. But I have a tendency to believe the ancient manuscripts were not just made up from somebody's mind, but that these events had to have occurred in the way that they were written, because there's many parallel accounts which confirm different details and hold different aspects of the same story. And then we get multiple confirming witnesses. And so I tend to think that they are confirming witness for one another, sort of like out of the mouths of three witnesses shall the truth be established. And so, again, I don't know how the timeline breaks down and where those years are to be added or subtracted, but I do tend to believe the stories, and especially with as much as written. I mean, because we have, the writings of Abraham, the Jasher Jubilees, the Targum, the legends of the Jews, the testaments of the Patriarchs and the Prophets, the Perkti, Rabbi Eleazar, the Chronicles of Jeremiah. All of them teach in similarity the same story.
Timeline. So do you find then that there's more confirming witnesses for this narrative than the other? Or
I believe so. Yeah.
You think so?
Because again, why would and how could somebody just make all this up?
Yeah, right.
If it didn't happen,
Yeah, I like this timeline. Obviously I've done timelines myself based on it. To me it feels more right. I know that's not very scholarly, but it just feels right. That there would be these various overlapping encounters with characters that would have such a profound influence on who they were, especially in the environments that they lived in, to form their belief systems.
Right. And I also believe that, if not all of the texts are inspired to some degree, but that, even the Book of Jubilees is said to have been narrated by the angels,
Yeah.
And then we have the Targum based on the original Torah. It just all seems to fit, and I tend to believe that, with as much detail as has come out in the shows that we've done, where we've talked about, all the various stories, even like with we were deliberating on Lot and his daughters, with the daughters that were married, and the two younger daughters, and why only those left with him. And then that story came out in all of what we had read.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah, have you got a chance to hear Adam Fink? I think it was just last weekend, or fairly recently. He did I think it was 2 videos. He read.
I've seen them, but I have not listened to them yet.
Yeah, they're quite good. I mean, he just did a straight reading of the writings of Abraham, but gave
right on.
He gave commentary, as he was reading it, and said, "Oh, okay." His whole thing was, "All right, let's just test it. Let's just go through it."
Yeah.
And it was very enjoyable. I haven't finished the second one yet, but watched all the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
I like Adam. He's a really kind brother, and I'm looking forward to doing shows with him.
Yeah, he's a solid dude. He's definitely a good brother. All right. You said before in the previous segment you had something you wanted to look at.
Yeah,
from the Legends of the
I'm
Jews.
gonna, and I skipped forward because on both of these accounts, we didn't go through the whole story of Isaac's sacrifice, but I wanted to catch up to where we are now, so I just skipped forward to where Isaac is to get married. So if people want to read about the other stories, because it's interesting, I'll bring up one thing in the Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets. It says that where Isaac was to be sacrificed, that would later be the place that the temple would be raised. So I thought that was interesting. But there's a lot of, little details and facts like that are interesting in the parallel accounts. But
yeah,
I'll go ahead.
Well, along those lines, in the commentary that Zach Bauer gave on the Book of Enoch, in the last, he did like 7 videos. In the last few of them, he was addressing typical arguments against the Book of Enoch and showing why it's not really a good argument. And he made some really good points. He was saying, most of the time, stuff was passed down orally. It was oral tradition. He said there are, many, many scholars agree that most of the books of the Bible were likely penned, each individual book was likely penned by more than one person. He's like the Isaiah, I think he says believed, I think it was 3 different authors. Now, he says, I still recognize Isaiah as coming from Isaiah, but as penned by 3 different people. So the writing style may be slightly different as they're putting to parchment the oral stories that were being relayed. And like there's people who call 2 Peter into question, but when you look into 2 Peter, for instance, it's believed that Jude may have likely been the author of 2 Peter, but Peter may have been behind bars relaying to Jude what to write, or Jude may have been a traveling companion and knew of whatever Peter was saying or whatnot, but that there are reasonable, logical, scholarly reasons to still accept books, like because many will say that Enoch is a composite book also. And he's like, so what? And he says one of the arguments is that I forget the word that's used. That there's a word that when like in the Book of Enoch, it says I went and prayed by the whatever in the land of Dan, and we know that Dan is one of the 12 tribes that doesn't show up until hundreds of years after the flood.
Yes.
So how would Enoch be talking about the land of Dan, thousands of years before the flood?
Right.
And he's like, look, that's easily explained, and he used a passage like it where it says something about I think it's the parable of one of the parables. It's either one of the parables or one of the passages in Revelation, whatever the case may be. It uses the word pence for a system of monetary money. And he's like, but if you look at the original language, it says denarius. Well, King James at that time just took the because pence being a United Kingdom form of money, took what was commonly understood in the time that the English was written as a pence is the direct correlation to what the same weight of silver or whatever was as a denarius in times. So the meaning in the people, let's say in 1611, they would have no idea what a denarius is, So the authors took creative liberty, understanding the meaning and the intent of the text. They put a modern word to substitute for an ancient word. He said, so if I can accept that, why couldn't I accept that a modern scribe, aware of the region in which Enoch was referring to, later becoming known as Dan, inserting that in the text for a cultural frame of reference for people to, okay, we know where that is, because the other name had fallen out of favor or whatnot. So
yeah, I think it's
a good argument.
Some of that. But I also think that some of the writers are prophetic in their vision.
Right. Look at Cyrus, right? Cyrus.
Yeah.
Being
exactly right.
Named 145 years or something ahead of time,
and shown his name in the scriptures. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can accept either argument, and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a valid argument to dismiss a text because of things like that.
Right, I fully agree. I think people nitpick too much.
Well, I think it gets down to is they proceed from an assumption.
Yes.
Angels don't mate with women, so I don't like the Book of Enoch because I don't believe.
Right.
They start with a belief that they have, and then they, base everything else on that.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I will go into the legends of the Jews.
Cool.
The blessing of God did not forsake Abraham in old age either, that it might not be said it had been granted to him only For the sake of Sarah, God prospered him after her death too. Hagar bore him a daughter, and Ishmael repented of his evil ways and subordinated himself to Isaac. And as Abraham enjoyed undisturbed happiness in his family, so also outside in the world. The kings of the east and the west eagerly besieged the door of his house in order to derive benefit from his wisdom. From his neck a precious stone was suspended, which possessed the power of healing the sick who looked upon it. On the death of Abraham, God attached it to the wheel of the sun. The greatest blessing enjoyed by him and by none beside except his son Isaac and Jacob, the son of Isaac, was that the evil inclination had no power over him, so that in this life he had a foretaste of the future world.
Oh, wait, that's crazy. What is this? This is like an amulet kind of thing? This, like...
Supposedly so, yeah, that would ward off, like the power of the evil eye, or somebody cursing, or, that kind of thing.
And attached it to the wheel of the sun.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but...
Well, that's interesting.
Unless it in some way is part of the sun and it pours forth the blessing in that way upon the world.
Or if the wheel of the sun is another ornament.
Yeah, true
that it's being attached to. I'm thinking like the staff in Indiana Jones, where he lines it up in the right thing, and then it beams a light and shows the location of where the if it's attached to something. That's interesting.
But all these divine blessings showered upon Abraham were not undeserved. He was clean of hand and pure of heart, one that lift up his soul unto vanity. He fulfilled all the commands that were revealed later, even the rabbinical injunctions, as for instance the one relating to the limits of a Sabbath day's journey, where for his reward was that God disclosed to him the new teachings which he expounded daily in the heavenly academy. But one thing lacked to complete the happiness of Abraham, the marriage of Isaac. He therefore called his old servant Eleazar unto himself. Eleazar resembled his master not only externally in his appearance, but also spiritually. Like Abraham, he possessed full power over the evil inclination, and like the master, the servant was an adept in the law. Abraham spake the following words to Eleazar: I am stricken in age, and I know not the day of my death. Therefore, prepare thyself and go into my country and to my kindred, and fetch hither a wife for my son. Thus he spake by reason of the resolution he had taken immediately after the sacrifice of Isaac on Moriah. For he had there said within himself that if the sacrifice had been executed, Isaac would have gone hence childless. He was even ready to choose a wife for his son from among the daughters of his 3 friends, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, because he knew them to be pious, and he did not attach much importance to aristocratic stock. Then spake God to him, and said, Concern thyself not about a wife for Isaac. One has already been provided for him. And it was made known to Abraham that Milcah, the wife of his brother Nahor, childless until the birth of Isaac, had then been remembered by God and made fruitful. She bore Bethuel, and he in turn at the time of Isaac's sacrifice begot the daughter destined to be the wife of Isaac. Mindful of the proverb, even if the wheat of thine own place be darnel, use it for seed. Abraham determined to take a wife for Isaac from his own family. He argued that as any wife he chose would have to become a proselyte, it would be best to use his own stock, which had the first claim upon him. Eleazar now said to his master, Peradventure no woman will be willing to follow me unto the land. May I then marry my own daughter to Isaac? No, replied Abraham. Thou art of the accursed race, and my son is of the blessed race. And curse and blessing cannot be united. But beware that thou bring not my son again unto the land from whence I came. For if thou broughtest him hither again, if it were as though thou tookest him to hell, God who sets the heavens in motion, he will set this matter right too. And he that took me from my father's house, and that spake unto me, and that swore unto me in Haran, and at the covenant of the pieces, that he would give this land unto my seed, he shall send his excellent angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife for my son from thence. Eleazar then swore to his master concerning the matter, and Abraham made him take the oath by the sign of the covenant. Attended by 10 men mounted upon 10 camels, laden with jewels and trinkets, Eleazar betook himself to Haran under the convoy of 2 angels, the one appointed to keep guard over Eleazar, the other over Rebekah. The journey to Haran took but a few hours. At evening of the same day he reached there, because the earth hastened to meet him in a wonderful way. He made a halt at the well of water, and he prayed to God to permit him to distinguish the wife appointed for Isaac among the damsels that came to draw water, by this token that she alone and not the others would give him drink. Strictly speaking, this wish of his was unseemly, for suppose a bondwoman had given him water to drink, but God granted his request. All the damsels said they could not give him of their water because they had to take it home. Then appeared Rebekah, coming to the well, contrary to her wont, for she was the daughter of a king, Bethuel her father being king of Haran. When Eleazar addressed his request for water to drink to this young innocent child, not only was she ready to do his bidding, but she rebuked the other maidens on account of their discourtesy to a stranger. Eleazar noticed too how the water rose up to her of its own accord from the bottom of the well, so that she needed not to exert herself to draw it. Having scrutinized her carefully, he felt certain that she was the wife chosen for Isaac. He gave her a nose ring wherein was set a precious stone, half a shekel in weight, foreshadowing the half shekel which her descendants would once bring to the sanctuary year by year. He gave her also 2 bracelets for her hands, of 10 shekels weight in gold, in token of the 2 tables of stone and the 10 commandments upon them. When Rebekah bearing the jewels came to her mother and to her brother Laban, this one hastened to Eleazar in order to slay him and take possession of his goods. Laban soon learnt that he would not be able to do much harm to a giant like Eleazar. He met him at the moment when Eleazar seized 2 camels and bore them across the stream. Besides, on account of Eleazar's close resemblance to Abraham, Laban thought he saw Abraham before him, and he said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. It is not becoming that thou shouldst stand without. I have cleansed my house of idols. But when Eleazar arrived at the house of Bethuel, they tried to kill him with cunning. They set poisoned food before him. Luckily, he refused to eat before he had discharged himself of his errand. And while he was telling his story, it was ordained by God that the dish intended for him should come to stand in front of Bethuel, who ate of it and died. Eleazar showed the document he had in which Abraham deeded all his possessions to Isaac, and he made it known to the kindred of Abraham how deeply attached to them his master was, in spite of the lone years of separation. Yet he let them know at the same time that Abraham was not dependent wholly upon them. He might seek a wife for his son among the daughters of Ishmael, or Lot. At first the kindred of Abraham consented to let Rebekah go with Eleazar, but as Bethuel had died, in the meantime they did not want to give Rebekah in marriage without consulting her. Besides, they deemed it proper that she should remain at home at least during the week of mourning for her father. But Eleazar, seeing the angel wait for him, would brook no delay, and he said, "The man who came with me and prospered my way waits for me without." And as Rebekah professed herself ready to go once with Eleazar, her mother and brother granted her wish and dismissed her with their blessing. But their blessings did not come from the bottom of their hearts. Indeed, as a rule, the blessing of the impious is a curse, wherefore Rebekah remained barren for years. Eleazar's return to Canaan was as wonderful as his going to Haran had been. A 17 days journey he accomplished in 3 hours.
What?
He left Haran at noon and he arrived at Hebron at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the time for the Mishnah prayer, which had been introduced by Isaac. He was in the posture of praying when Rebekah first laid eyes upon him, wherefore she asked Eleazar what man this was. She saw he was not an ordinary individual. She noticed the unusual beauty of Isaac, and also that an angel accompanied him. Thus, her question was not dictated by mere curiosity. At this moment she learnt, through the Holy Spirit, that she was destined to be the mother of the godless Esau. Terror seized her at the knowledge, and her trembling she fell from the camel and inflicted an injury upon herself. After Isaac had heard the wonderful adventures of Eleazar, he took Rebekah to the tent of his mother Sarah. She showed herself worthy to be her successor. The cloud appeared again that had been visible over the tent during the life of Sarah, and had vanished at her death. The light shone again in the tent of Rebekah that Sarah had kindled at the coming in of the Sabbath, and that had burnt miraculously throughout the week. The blessing returned with Rebekah that had hovered over the dough kneaded by Sarah, and the gates of the tent were open for the needy, wide and spacious, as they had been during the lifetime of Sarah. For 3 years Isaac had mourned for his mother, and he could find no consolation in the academy of Shem and Eber, his abiding place, during that period. But Rebekah comforted him after his mother's death, for she was the counterpart of Sarah in person and in spirit. As a reward for having executed to his full satisfaction the mission with which he had charged him, Abraham set his bondman free. The curse resting upon Eleazar as upon all the descendants of Canaan was transformed into a blessing, because he ministered unto Abraham loyally. Greatest reward of all, God found him worthy of entering paradise alive, a distinction that fell to the lot of very few.
Wow, that's crazy wild. There's a lot in there. Eleazar, first of all, being, first identified as the accursed race, so we know that that's Canaanite, but
right.
It specifically said that he was a giant, to a giant like Eleazar.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then, I had remembered reading the whole story about Laban and Bethuel trying to murder Abraham or Eleazar, but and that it backfired and that God intervened. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, wow. I was aware that Mamre, Aner, and Eshcol were Amorite giants that were confederate with Abraham, but I had never thought of Eleazar being one also. That's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
And that he went into paradise without dying, it looked like, that last part that you just read. That it was...
yeah, I have to check that.
That last sentence? It was the last sentence I think you read.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if it was after he had died or before he died.
Yeah, if you could pull that, we got about a minute before break. Can you pull that back up, that last one?
Yeah, 1 second, let me...
Yeah, the last one. The curse resting upon Eleazar as upon all the descendants of Canaan was transformed into a blessing because he ministered to Abraham loyally. Greatest reward of all, God found him worthy of entering paradise alive, a distinction that fell to the lot of very few. Wow.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm going to get some water.
Okay, yeah, we're going to break, so we'll be right back. And we're back on the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and we are going into the final half-hour segment of this broadcast. Right before the break, we're talking about some interesting things, like, wow, that Eliezer was apparently a giant. He was a Canaanite that went alive into paradise, and it says a distinction that fell to the lot of very few. I'm not aware of anybody.
The thief.
Or,
he was the only one.
Well, he died though. He.
Oh yeah, you're right. He died on the cross. Yeah.
I'm not aware of anybody going into. I mean, where are people going into Hades? Without
Enoch
dying?
and Elijah. Because when they in the Gospel of Nicodemus, when Adam and his descendants were baptized in the Archersine Lake, they met the thief. They went into paradise. Then they saw Enoch and Elijah therein. And then they told them the story of how they would be the two witnesses of Revelation 11 that would come and contend with the Antichrist at the end of days.
So I guess this answers the question: can Nephilim be saved? I've always maintained with Danny Duvall is the first person I heard say this. He said, wherever the spirit of man and a heart of repentance is present, salvation is possible.
Right.
So, now, of course, this is pre-Yeshua and trusting in the cross and all
Right.
that. So it's a different accounting of faithfulness. But I mean, you bless Abraham, you're blessed. Because that's what Genesis 12 says. I will bless those that bless thee, Abraham, and curse those that curse thee, Abraham. So you have 4 giants here: Mamre, Aner, and Eshcol. Now I've got to add Eliezer to the mix. I never considered Eliezer that, but I mean, this tells you point blank that he, first of all, was of the accursed people, and that a giant. It says specifically to a giant like Eliezer. So I'm like,
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that gives it away for sure, I think.
Well, I mean, what a world Abraham lived in.
Right. Right.
I mean, because that he was the guy that sat at the gates, to minister to people. But it seemed like he always had these guys hanging around him. So you can imagine, we always have this picture of Father Abraham, right? Old guy, long white beard. But I mean, I never imagined old guy, long white beard with 4 giants sitting around him too,
right,
chilling out.
And not only
on a
that,
campfire.
but he killed and slaughtered
giant
kings.
Yeah.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't recognize, is that he was contending with other giant kings.
Man, what a life and what a world,
right?
That he lived in. And so we see that. So he didn't go to he went to Haran. This text you just read tells us that point blank.
Right.
That
yes.
Eliezer went. Pretty wild though. 17-day journey. That's interesting. So it'd be by foot. A 17-day, even though he's riding camels or stuff, you got to assume that it was a leisurely journey. They weren't like at full gallop or anything.
Right.
So 17-day journey apparently from Hebron to Haran. That seems a little long. I don't remember it. Well, I mean, there's some pretty interesting terrain that they'd have to go through going from Hebron to Haran. But at any rate, whatever the travel routes were at the time, it's not like as the bird flies, so you'd have whatever the travel routes were at the time. 17-day journey that was completed in 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
So that's
and we see that hinted to in the previous stories, saying that his journey was shortened.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost like a Philip scenario.
Right, yeah.
Where
I see this in the Great Commission 1 and 2. the stories of the Acts and the Gospels of the Apostles, we see that various times this has also occurred for the apostles in similar manner, that their journeys were shortened and that they were aided to get there in quicker manner.
Well, I've always been intrigued by that, and I've always maintained, once I wrapped my head around the idea that Norm Franz had said when I went to a Passover conference one time. I was just coming off the pre-trib rapture page where I was like, wait, there's no pre-trib rapture. Like, this was a shocking revelation for me as somebody who grew up, hardcore pre-tribber, realizing, wow, this isn't going to happen, and looking at end times and being confronted with the idea that, whoa, wait, we're going to go through this thing, freaking out about it, and not having the money for God, gold, guns. Well, didn't need money for God, but for the 4 G's, right? God, gold, guns, and groceries. I had God, but I didn't have the gold, guns, and groceries to stock up. And Norm Franz, when I went to this Passover conference, said, "Your Goshen is wherever God has you."
Yes.
And wow, did that set me free? Because knowing what he did for the Israelites in Goshen and everything it took to get them to Goshen. That wherever you are, for me it's North Dallas, this is my Goshen, that I started to then believe, based on stories like this, that Jeremiah talks about a greater exodus that's going to be so great that it'll make the exodus of Moses' day pale by comparison. So, all the movies that have been made about the Exodus, Ten Commandments and so forth, they do okay job of, even with the special effects, the state of the art at the time, it makes some pretty impressive special effects. But I think that it was so spectacular that we've never seen anything as amazing as what the Exodus was, and that the greater Exodus is going to make that pale in comparison. I've thought, I could walk out the door of my room right here that I'm sitting in my home office and end up wherever I need to be. If he does this greater Exodus thing, wherever we're going to ultimately Exodus to, from wherever our Goshens are, that all I got to do is walk out the door and I could be there.
Yes.
Boop.
Right.
Why not? Right.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Have you ever read the text of about Jeremiah? One of his servants, he had prayed for him to not see the destruction of Jerusalem, and he sent him into the pasture land to collect figs, and he did so, and then he fell asleep and took a nap there, and he remained there for 70 years, the entire and then God woke him up, and the figs were still fresh in his basket. And he walked back to the city, and Jerusalem, it was 70 years later, and it had been destroyed. And Jeremiah and his people had been taken into exile. And then God, affirms that this is all true. And he realizes that he's been asleep for 70 years. You've never read that text?
No, but I guess that would be where, was it Rip Van Winkle must have been loosely based on that. So many, we're finding so many legends and folk tales and stuff like that seem to trace back to actual Hebrew stories.
Yeah, I don't know about Rip Van Winkle. I'm not sure of that story, but this one is called the Pamphilona Jeremiah or something of that nature.
Wow, no.
I'll find out the name of it and send it to you. But it's a very interesting story. It shows that God can do anything He wants.
Yeah.
Even time travel a person. Amazing.
For sure. Seed. I've talked about Seed being a 6-season series with 12 episodes per season. So there's an overall story arc that the Seed War that begins in Genesis 3:15 and then culminates in the events of the Book of Revelation. That's the overall story arc. But within that overall story arc, each season will have a theme. And season 1, the theme of season 1 is time travel. And so, I'm taking lots of creative liberty, of course, to do, my story, to tell my story and how the time travel takes place in my story. But there'll be allusions to things, like some of the things we're talking about here, that I would be able to show biblical precedents for what I'm talking creative liberty. And in video editing, they call it scrubbing the timeline, where like you can set the parameters for your editing, whatever you're editing, like the motion graphic version of the comic book is, we've got that set to 25 frames per second. Typical film is 24 frames per second. Typical video is 29.97 or 30 frames per second. So depending on what project I'm working on, we set the frame rate. And what I realized after editing video for decades now is that, like, it's made up of still frames. So if it's 30 frames per second, that's 30 still images. So video is actually static. It's not, there's nothing there but still images. That it's not until you put a playhead on top of it and hit the space bar to make the playhead move that the play bar goes across each of those individual frames, in this case, let's say 25 frames per second, to give the illusion of motion. And I got to thinking, wow, God's like the time scrubber.
Right.
And I began to wonder, because when I was in the foreign mission field, I only encountered this once. I was in Albania, and it was this beautiful, like, mountain scenery where we were, and I just happened to have a break, and I went outside for a few minutes just to kind of look at this beautiful scenery. And it's like the Rockies or something, just massive mountains in the background. And I was on this dirt road, and I seen this like gypsy guy on a donkey or a horse or something, coming towards me slow, and the shot was just beautiful. I'm like, what a beautiful shot. So I started videotaping this guy, right? And as he got closer to me, this dude starts flipping out. And one of my translators heard the commotion outside, so he came running out. And the guy that was on the horse, he was gonna mess me up. He was gonna go down and really mess me up. And he's like, put the camera away. What, dude? So he went and dealt with the guy, whatever, in whatever language they were talking. And then he pulled me aside later. He's like, you got to understand, man, these people believe that you are capturing their soul when you use a camera on them. And like, how do you apologize for that, right? I didn't know. Sorry, dude. But what I found is that there are many cultures that actually believe that photography, you're stealing their soul. And I got to thinking, maybe there's something to that, because just take a picture. I'm looking at a picture right in front of me of Sheila and I that was taken at a party, and that is a freeze frame of an event where the two of us were together and somebody took that picture and captured us. Boop! It's like frozen. That frame. And I began to wonder, well, okay, if video is, whatever frame, let's say 24 to 30 frames per second, I began to wonder, what is the frame rate of life? Like, what if all of us are actually still images that this time scrubber, that we call it scrubbing the timeline when you move the playhead across the timeline, is moving? And if God is the time scrubber, then the same way in video, I can grab one frame of video, pluck it out of the timeline, and move it anywhere I want, and then hit play, and then it will be inserted into that part of the timeline. I'm going, well, I mean, it seems like he does that with various people.
Yeah. Right.
And so anyway, season 1 of Seed, it will explore that concept.
Right on. Well, yeah, you definitely need to read that manuscript then, because it will give you, biblical precedent for that whole story.
That's very cool. So we found out that there were also others before Rebecca in that story. Genesis makes it just sound like she's the first one, but there were others before her, and then she actually, not only does she take care of Eliezer, but she rebukes the others for not taking care of him.
Oh, and that she's the daughter, that Bethuel is a king, if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that there was an angel there that and if you go back to Abraham, he said that the God that had done this, that, and the other thing for me, that he would go before you.
Right.
So are we talking a pre-incarnate Yeshua, the angel of the Lord, or is this a Gabriel type character, or just some other messenger?
In the Targum it says that it is the word of the Lord.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild. Like the angel of the Lord's like, "Come on, bro, we got to go."
Right.
He's standing at the door, and in what you just read, it's like Eliezer looked and saw the angel saying, "Come on, let's go. We can't stick around here."
Yeah. And it's interesting that in this, it tells us that Abraham was told by God also of Rebekah specifically, and that she had already been chosen to be his wife.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then we have this interesting scenario of a cloud of light or something, a cloud of shining that had been over Sarah, that left when Sarah died, but returned when Rebecca entered.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting as well.
So would that be like the Shekinah glory kind of concept?
I think so, because I think the Shekinah glory is in line with the Holy Spirit and is a feminine aspect as well.
Yeah. And we have the Academy of Shem and Eber. So Eber would have been younger, obviously, than Shem. He's the one from which we get the word Hebrew. But it's interesting that they're paired up. That Shem and Eber are paired up. So it's the Academy of Shem.
He's initiated. He must be initiated into the order of the ancients for him to be in the school of Shem.
Well, that's really interesting wording, because what you just said, because Adam, when he was doing the commentary on the writings of Abraham, he was pulling out of the writings of Abraham where it talks about basically the foundation of secret societies.
Right, exactly, yes.
How, going back to Cain, I guess, that there was this, the secret societies and the orders and everything and all this, and so this would be like the antithesis of that.
Right. Yeah, and they talk about the secret combinations, which, I think are spellcraft curses. Even the way that they conjure demons and are involved with angels, fallen angels, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. Is there anything more that you are aware of that would go into detail on the so-called Academy of Shem and Eber?
The writings of Abraham is the one that goes into it in greater detail than anything else. As far as the way that the order worked, there is a book, and I sent it to you, The Order of the Ancients. There's a manuscript called the Book of the Order, written by Elijah the Thesbit, when he was part of that initiated order.
Wow.
And then he talks about all their ways and how they lived communally in the way that the apostles did, that they shared everything, and that even Abraham had lived in that same manner, and that Lot left because he wanted to own private property. So there's a thread of this underlying truth and theme that the order of the ancients lived very much like the Essenes did in Qumran, where they all gathered together and shared everything that they had equally in prosperity.
Very cool. So that's all that I observed that jumped out at me in what we were looking at there. Did you have any other comments, or did you got something on the screen there you wanted to?
Yeah, I've got. I'll go through this one more account. We got Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets.
Okay, cool. We got about 8 minutes or so.
Okay, I'll just try to catch up on this.
Awesome.
All right. Isaac mourned his mother 3 years. When this time was elapsed, Abraham called to him his faithful servant Eliezer and said to him, I am old, and I know that not the day of my death. Therefore must I no longer delay the marriage of my son Isaac. Lay thine hand upon my thigh and swear to me, by God Almighty, to fulfill my commission. Do not take from my son a wife of the daughters of the Canaanites, but go to Haran, to the place whence I came, and bring thence a wife for my son Isaac. And he added the proverb, when you have wheat of your own, do not sow your field with your neighbor's corn. Eleazar asked, but how if a woman of that place will not accompany me hither? But Abraham said, fear not, go, and the Lord be with thee. So the servant of Abraham went with 10 camels, and he reached Haran in 3 hours, for the earth fled under the feet of his camels. And Michael the angel protected
Michael.
him on. Yeah, interesting. Protected him on his way. It said in the other one that there were 2 angels. There was one for him and one for Rebecca. In the previous account. And then in the Targum, it said that the word of the Lord, was one of them.
Well, we see the example with Abraham and the Sodom and Gomorrah deal that they travel together sometimes.
Thing. Yeah. Yes. When he reached Haran, he besought the Lord to give him a sign by which he might know the maiden who was to be the wife of Isaac. Let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, let down thy pitcher, pray thee that I may drink, and she shall say, drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. Let the same be she that thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac. And there were many damsels by the fountain. And the servants said to them, let down the pitcher that I may drink. But they all said, we may not tarry, for we must take the water home. Then came Rebekah the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, out of the well, and she chided the maidens for their churliness. And lo, the water in the well leaped to the margin, and she let down her pitcher and offered it to the man and said, drink, and I will give thy camels also. Then Eleazar leaped from his camel and said, and he brought forth his gift, and he gave her a nose ring with a jewel of 1/2 shekel weight, and bracelet of 10 shekels weight. And he asked if he might lodge in her house overnight. She answered, not one night only, but many. Now Rebekah's brother Laban, so called from the paleness of his face, or say some, from the cowardness of his breast, which made him pale, coveted the man's gold, and resolved to kill him. Therefore he put poison in the bowl of meat, which was offered him. But the bowl was changed by accident, and it fell to the portion of Bethuel, and he ate, and he died that same night. And Laban would have fallen upon Eleazar with his own hand, but that he saw him lead the 2 camels at once over the brook, and he knew thereby that he was stronger than he. After the engagement had been drawn up, as it is written in the first book of Moses, Eleazar urged for a speedy departure. Mother and brother consented, but on the following day they asked that, besides the 7 days of mourning for Bethuel, they should tarry a year, or at least 10 months according to the usual custom. But Rebekah opposed them, and said that she would go at once. It was noon when Eleazar and his retinue, together with Rebekah and her nurse, Deborah, left Haran, and in 3 hours they were at Hebron. At the selfsame time Isaac was abroad, in the fields returning from the school of Seth, lamenting over his mother, and saying his evening prayer. That must have meant Shem, but it said Seth there. But saying his evening prayer, Rebekah saw him with his hands out, spread, and his angel walking behind him. And she said, who is that with the shining countenance, with another walking behind him? At the same moment she knew who it was, and with prophetic vision she saw that she would become the mother of Esau, and she trembled and fell from the camel. Isaac took Rebekah to wife and led her into the tent of Sarah, and the door was once more open, and the perpetual lamp was again kindled. And it seemed to Isaac as if all the happiness that had gone with Sarah had returned with Rebekah, so he was comforted for his mother. Eleazar was rewarded for his faithful service, for Abraham gave him his freedom, in that he was taken into paradise without having tasted of death. So yeah, this brings out the same thing. How much time do we have?
2 minutes.
Okay, well I'll just stop there, since that's the same place that the other one ended. And we can just comment for the last two.
Yeah. So what you've read tonight so far was from the Targum, the Legends of the Jews, and the Legends of the Patriarchs and Prophets, right?
Yes, in that order, yes.
Oh, okay. Targum's Legends of the Jews and Legends of... A lot of people are asking which one's which. Okay, I'm writing that down too for the show notes.
Yeah, and if people are interested in the manuscripts, you can find all of these, including the writings of Abraham, which are not published anywhere else, but we've published them so that people can have them. And they are included also in the Book of the Order of the Ancients, together with the Book of the Ancients written by Elijah the Thesbit, which is not published anywhere else either. So if you want the writings of Abraham, I would get the Book of the Order of the Ancients, because it comes together with that book by Elijah the Thesbit.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting reading.
All right, very cool. Well, that's about it. So looks like we're out of time here. Another great show. A lot of interesting stuff to think about. And so we'll see you back next week on your show. And we'll continue where we left off. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you back next time on the Revolutionary Radio Project. Good night, everybody.
God bless. Good night.